Hello, my name's Aaron. I'm Project Director at Blitz Games. I've been in the games industry for about 15 years, and I joined Blitz about 3 years ago to become the Project Director for TruSim, which is the serious games division of Blitz Games. Project Director is a bit of a fancy term, but basically it just means that it's my fault if things go wrong. So just a very quick bit of background about Blitz. Blitz is split into 6 divisions which handle 6 different areas. So you've got Blitz Games, which is the family games, Blitz Arcade, which is downloadable content, Volatile Games, which is the more mature games with shooting and killing, TruSim, serious games, and then our own Blitz Tech and Blitz Academy. I left our mission statement in there because one of the words in there was very, very important to us, which is stable. Now, the games industry is notoriously unstable. I did a bit of research yesterday. The number of redundancies in the games industry this year in England is 2,500. And worldwide, a games company goes under maybe 2 a week at the moment. So obviously my bosses are very keen that that doesn't happen to them. And so what they decided to do is set up this TruSim for serious games, because serious games are an all year round thing. They don't rely on having a publisher to pay for your game. Now generally in the games industry what happens is that a publisher says, we'd like you to make a game for us, and you say, thank you very much, that'd be very nice. And then they say, but we want it out for this Christmas. And you say, but it's January. And they put a little flag in the ground and you run as fast as you can towards the flag and hope not to drop too much stuff on the way. And when you get really close to the flag, you say, well, half this stuff's too heavy, and you throw it away. And then you get to the flag, and then you start that process again. What this means is that at the end of every year, from about October to January, you have a room full of programmers and artists sitting around really not doing very much, because you don't have another game to go on to. And especially if you're a small company, that can spell disaster. So the serious games part of the company was set up to filter off the people who weren't doing anything and put them to doing something useful. So really it's all about flexibility. So we've got these, I can move to the next slide now, forget about that. We've got these 2 grants for the figures you can see in front of you. And what that gave us was the opportunity to do some research and development for things that were important for the whole studio rather than just for this one project. So we decided very early on that what we were going to do with this money was to make reusable content that we could apply for the rest of the company. And I'll show you a little bit, a few bits and pieces about that later on. The other thing that the serious games part has done, it's kind of ups the PR of the games industry as a whole. Generally, the view of the games industry, certainly by the English press, is guns don't kill people, children who play games kill people, which is infuriating every time it happens, but it is true. And the Triage game which we produced with this grant has done it's sort of turned a corner really. So the first thing that we built was this was with the MOD, working with Lieutenant Colonel David Vassallo, who's a field surgeon. And this was a decision-making game, and the first serious game that TruSim made. This was done in about 6 weeks. I totally forgot to warn you that there's going to be a lot of blood in this presentation. Sorry about that. So basically the game that you saw, you don't get to walk around, you just say, right, I'm going to stick this catheter in his neck, and it captures that decision, and then at the end you're marked on whether you did it at the right time in the procedure. This was another little visualization that we put together for the MOD. So it talks about partners and choosing your partners wisely. So for Triage Trainer, we, as a games company, we are experts in engagement. So that's our little part. We put it together, but we have to make it fun for the player and we have to make it engaging. Otherwise, people won't play. things we didn't know about were learning theory, well, didn't even know what that meant, and no understanding really of how to bring instructional design and game design together. And obviously we're not doctors either, although now some of my team seem to think they are, which is kind of worrying. And the day spent marching around in blue scrubs was quite interesting. And we're not human factors experts either. That's how people interact with the machine. So we realised that we couldn't possibly do all of this by ourselves, and indeed the grant stipulates that you must work with partners. So and also we didn't have the level of working capital to do this all on our own. So we secured this grant and started working with these partners. Now, it's not all rosy working with partners, because they do things in a totally different way. Everybody does. One of the companies that we work with, you know, they came to us with a 4-year plan, down to the very last detail of what they were going to do during this. And I tend to plan 2 weeks ahead, and then in 2 weeks I plan the next 4 weeks, and like that, because things change so quickly in the games industry. But other people like the universities, they tend to put together a prototype relatively quickly using some existing game engines and so on. But because we were using our own, it took slightly longer. So there's this kind of frustration between partners that needs to be really carefully managed, because it can get out of hand. So for a medical game that was going to be played by doctors and ambulancemen, we had originally planned that we would do it quite in a kind of low-fi way, but it became pretty clear to us that doctors expect to see a real person. So we had to do an awful lot of upfront research to make our character as believable as possible. I don't know how many games players there are in the audience, but there are certain things about in-game characters that are wrong. And one of those things is the eyes of a character. They tend to be kind of dead. And one of the ways that most games get around this is that they put a dirty grey hat on them. So you just can't see their eyes. So we did a lot of research into eye movement and blinking and all that kind of stuff. And this looks slightly frivolous, but it was a lot of fun, I'm not going to deny it. It's made of chocolate, which is nice. This was research that we did to look at how blood flows on skin and on cloth, and how it clots on different materials, so that a doctor at a scene of an incident will be able to tell by how much blood there is and what state the blood is in, how long the injury has been there. There's another one of those. It's a nice stomach injury, done with a kitchen sponge. It's like Blue Peter. So this research then, we worked with some of the doctors at Manchester Royal Infirmary to build some very realistic injuries. There's 2 of them here. This is somebody who's been hit with a big chunk of concrete. And all of these injuries are real injuries that the doctor we worked with was in the hospital after the Manchester bombings and took photographs of everything. And he was terrifically excited to be recreating them in 3D.